And now I would like to tell you an unusual story how the same attacking ideas can be used by both white and black in practically the same positions, but not exactly the same positions, because they can appear with reversed colors. Long time ago, about 13 years ago, I was quite impressed by the game that my Polish friend, Grandmaster Tomasz Markowski, won against Israeli Grandmaster Ilya Smirin in European Championship. That was actually one of the highlights in Markowski's career. He was very close to winning that championship after that game. But okay, finally I think he was third in that European Championship, which was still quite a success for him. The idea he used in closed Sicilian sometimes can be used also by black in English opening. And later on I would like to show you two games of mine where at least I tried to play the same setup and play that idea. In one of those two games that I will be showing, I could play the idea, but as we will see, in slightly different circumstances. And on the other game I wanted to play that idea, but my opponent prevented me from doing that. But okay, first I have to show the original game Markowski against Smirin to make you understand what I'm talking about. So Markowski plays g3. Okay, that's one of his favorite openings. I remember in tournament in Polyanitsa's drew 2 times he played this against me. Fortunately I managed to win both games. So g6, bishop g2, bishop g7, e4. So now he could see that once black didn't start to fight for the center from the beginning, white can start doing it even on move 3. It's not okay. Normally white plays e2, e4 on move 1 or doesn't play it at all. Even after d4, let's say, in the most of Slav positions, the pawn comes on e4 already from e3. But here, okay, it's an exception. So c5, d3, and we get this closed Sicilian position. Knight c6, f4. Okay, it's very important to advance the pawns, because if white goes knight f3, then sometimes knight would go somewhere just to allow to play f4. So if white can play f4, immediately it's better. f4, and d6, knight f3, e5, short castle, knight g7, it's knight c3, knight g7, short castle, short castle. Okay, now this is a critical position. I never had this position when I was white, but I had very similar structure with reversed colors, as I will explain it later. And for example, in the game that I will show against Jansen, okay, it would be his move, and then knight d4 would prevent that idea. So, as I said, in '99, I was very impressed by this game, because the idea was just brilliant. White goes f5. Okay, it's a normal move f5, but at the moment it's a pawn sacrifice. And after g takes f5, knight h4. So the whole idea is to get the full control over the light squares and start attacking black king, of course. What can black do here? In my opinion, maybe the best what black can do is try to give up this pawn back immediately after f4. But still, after g takes f4, the feeling is that black has not equalized completely, because white is simply more active. Then maybe black could think about playing knight d4. I'm just thinking about this because I'm just remembering that when something similar with reversed card appeared in my game against Bachman, which I would like to show you afterwards, that he played a similar idea of defense, and although I could win the game, but it was not so clear. So whatever happens, black should at least not keep fighting for these white squares, not just give them away. And this is exactly what Smirin did. He took the pawn in order to stay with pawn up. But after d takes e4, he lost this fight for the squares here. Here, the triumph of white strategy could be seen as if black plays knight d4, preventing knight f5. Because then white comes with the other knight here, and the knight on d4, which normally should be the pride of black's position, is in fact a vulnerable piece. Black will have to get with his knight back to b5, and then he loses this fight for the white squares. For example, f5, c3, knight b5, queen d3, knight c7, knight takes f5. White got back, sacrificed pawn, and all the initiative with on white squares. This bishop on g2 is extremely strong piece. So I might be slightly exaggerating, but at least my emotional feeling about this position after this pawn sacrifice is that white already has the advantage, that black position is extremely difficult. Smirin played f6. Well, probably, I don't know exactly what he was preventing with this move, but okay. Maybe it's more that now knight d5 is not so strong, so that's why f6 move was made. But Markowski played knight f5, and Smirin took it with the bishop. If he takes with the knight, he can't win the fight for the light squares either. For example, he plays knight e7, and now, well, I would say that even g4 is good, and then knight d5. But it's also possible to not close the diagonal for queen, and then probably something like this, knight d5, can also be considered. So if black takes, then he's just totally blocked, and the position is nearly lost for black. If he takes on f5, then a very strong attack starts, I think, after queen h5. Okay, it's not so easy yet to say all the exact moves here, but the general idea is clear. Still, I'm looking at this position and I feel that Smirin had to actually take on f5 with the knight. He had to try to keep his bishop, because he took with the bishop on f5, played king h8, and now he has two knights, but the position is not so close in order to knights to be powerful, to be a power. Bishop, this light squared bishop is much more powerful than black knight, as we will see later on in the game. Meanwhile, the bishop on g7 is clearly worse than white's bishop on c1. In fact, this bishop doesn't even seem to be a bishop at the moment. It seems like a big pawn, because like standing next to the pawn of f6, e5, d6, all these blocked pawns. or pawns that have no moves. So two bishops are clearly stronger than bishop and knight, and therefore I insist that on f5 black should have taken with the knight in this position, and then at least bishop on c8 would not be worse than the bishop on g2, and then black would probably have better surviving chances. But okay, as we know, black took with the bishop, e takes f5, king h8, knight d5, so takes, and now Smirin went to look for a counterplay by playing queen b6, so he wants to play c4 and queen c5. In my opinion, Tomasz Markowski here committed a little inaccuracy. It's true that he should prevent c4 and queen c5, but he should not have put his pawn on c4, in my opinion. Because, okay, black can push his pawn to d5, even to d4, but he will not get the same kind of counterplay that he would get if white pawn would be on c4. So maybe I would now recommend from white side a move like king g2 after king knight e7, bishop e6. If queen c6, then even king can go to h3, and if d5, think about the attack on the king's side. Still, these central pawns can also be forced, so okay, I don't know. I have to say that the position is still relatively complicated, and okay, finally we don't have to forget that black has an extra pawn. And now I also realize why Smirin played queen b6. If he played knight e7 immediately, Markowski would take the b7 pawn, and then it would be the equal number of pawns. So that's why Smirin played queen b6. It's not only about c4 check, but it's also about playing knight e7. So Markowski played c4, knight e7, bishop e6, and in my opinion, it's here where Smirin committed really the decisive mistake. He played d5, trying to release, to release his pieces. He should have played rook a d8, trying to get d5 next move. It turns out that white does not have the ideas of immediately mating black. For example, queen h5, d5, g4, all looks extremely strong, but e4, rook is still not coming to the third rank, and okay, black is still fighting. It could also be that computer would find the decisive advantage for white, but at least me, I don't see it at the moment. a4 takes, and then rook comes to d3. So, therefore, after rook d8, white cannot yet think about just mating black. White should do something more positional. And, for example, if white plays queen f3, black can go queen c6, trying to exchange queens and play d5. Well, here, as I said, things are not that easy, but maybe white could think about something totally unnatural, but like changing queens like this. It looks very strange, but at least it stops d5. If black plays d5, white can take it. And if black exchanges queens, tries to defend the pawn, white plays bishop d2 and then bishop a5, black will drop either rook, either exchange or this pawn. So, my estimation that white would still be better after rook d8, but it's definitely a chance for black. So black should not have forgotten that he has an extra pawn and he has to try to do something about this. Smirin tried to get some forced line, but after d5, c takes d5, he's no longer going to win a pawn. And of course, with material equality, it's should be lost for black. So rook a d8, king, sorry, c4 check, king g2, rook a d8. So queen f3, rook d6, rook d1, rook a d8. Yeah, by the way, it was the other rook that here came to d8, but it doesn't really matter. So queen f3, rook d6, rook d1, rook a d8. And now b3. So Markowski just goes for the exchange. Smirin needed one more move to attack the pawn on d5, but now it's too late. So after c3, bishop a3, he tries some tactics with c2, rook d3, bishop h6, but it's not the type of the position where tactics should work. So, yeah, Markowski just went queen h5, so c1, queen, okay, there is no queen, so bishop takes c1, takes, queen a5, queen f7, and here black resigned because after knight g8, rook c7, white just mates black. Okay, I have to say I was extremely impressed by this game, but I must also admit that I always looked at the first part of the game, thinking that the rest was just logical. As we could see, if Smirin didn't just give up the pawn on d5 immediately, the position would still not be completely clear, but it would still be very promising for Markowski. And okay, he achieved it by sacrificing the pawn with white, getting positional compensation. First of all, the power of this bishop, of light squared bishops. And knowing that game, suddenly I realized that in some of the positions of English opening, similar ideas could be tried as black. And then when playing black, you don't even you're not even that worried whether you will not get advantage after sacrificing. The important thing is to have at least an equal game, and here Markowski had of course more than an equal game for the pawn. And recently in Olympiad I tried to play a very similar idea against Paraguayan Grandmaster Axel Bachmann, but as we will see now, in that game there was one little detail which was different, which I did not notice. Okay, let's just come to my game against Bachmann in order to understand what I mean now.